It had been about 5 months since the divorce papers were signed when my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. It was short and panic-induced. "Lucas, Snowball is missing." Snowball was a cat I had purchased during the early days of our marriage. Elena was constantly traveling or out at social events, so that little ball of fur was the only real company I had in that massive, empty house. But when everything fell apart and we split up, Snowball made his choice. I remember the day vividly. We were standing on opposite ends of the living room, a vast expanse of marble floor between us, with the cat sitting right in the center. Without pausing for even a second, he trotted directly over to her. As Elena scooped him up into her arms, preparing to walk out of my life, she shot me a look of pure triumph. "See, Lucas?" she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Even the cat won't choose you." She wasn't wrong. It felt like nobody ever really chose me. I stared at her text for a long time. I typed out a dozen different paragraphs. Angry ones. Sad ones. But I erased them all. Finally, I just sent back, "We are divorced. Don't contact me about this kind of thing anymore." Elena replied almost instantly, "You don't want Snowball anymore?" "No," I typed. There was a long pause, the typing bubble appearing and disappearing, before she sent one final message. "You don't want Snowball, and you don't want me either. I didn't." By the time I finally agreed to sign those papers, I was done. Elena hadn't even been living in our house for 3 months prior to the split. Despite her absence, I couldn't escape her. She was everywhere. Grocery store checkout lines, social media feeds, the evening news. As the daughter of the wealthy Blackwell family, her romantic escapades with various actors and internet celebrities were always headline material. It was impossible to ignore. There were so many conflicting rumors that it was hard to know what was true, but one thing was undeniably clear. Elena was punishing me. She was punishing her husband, the man she was forced to marry, for stifling her freedom and for allegedly chasing away the man she actually loved. My mother-in-law kept things civil because our families had deep business connections, but my own father didn't bother with politeness. Every time he called, it was a lecture. "How did I raise such a useless son?" he'd shout. "You can't even keep your own wife in check." I thought about his words for a moment before giving him a calm, honest answer. "It must be genetic, Dad. Mom couldn't keep you in check either, could she? Otherwise, you wouldn't have ended up with another son from another woman who is only 3 months younger than me." My father exploded. I could hear something break against a wall on his end of the line. The standard insults followed. "Ungrateful child. Do you know who pays your bills? And you are just like your mother." It was just noise to me at this point. I hung up and squeezed my eyes shut, feeling a heavy wave of exhaustion crash over me. I rubbed my forehead, trying to push away the headache, but my mind kept drifting back to the article I'd read that morning. Heiress Elena Blackwell spotted late night with rising star actor Julian. Flaunts luxury watch. Are wedding bells ringing? The article had a high-resolution photo of the actor, Julian. He had a sharp jawline and intense eyes. He looked almost identical to my half-brother Ryan, which meant he also looked exactly like the man Elena really wanted, but couldn't have. Julian was just a stand-in, a look-alike substitute. It made sense why Elena had given him that limited edition watch. It was a piece she had bought for an obscene amount of money years ago and kept hidden in her safe. I scrolled back to the article. The comment section was flooded with fans losing their minds. "Congrats to Julian. They look amazing together. I'm so jealous. Julian is marrying into royalty," one user tried to argue, Royalty. Keep dreaming. He's just a toy to her. The fans immediately attacked the dissenter. Are you blind? Do you know what a watch like that signifies? A watch. I had one too, but mine had been selected by Elena's personal assistant. It was flashy and expensive, the kind of thing that signaled son-in-law of the Blackwells. But that was all it was. A badge of ownership. At our small private wedding, Elena had slid it onto my wrist with the same enthusiasm one might have for taking out the trash. I kept reading the arguments in the comments until one stuck out to me. People only put effort into gifts for the people they actually love. It wasn't news to me that Elena didn't love me. And yet, in the quiet of the night, sleep wouldn't come. The clock on my phone crept toward 3:00 a.m. The darkness felt heavy, and the silence of the house was suffocating. Just before 4:00 a.m., Snowball started sprinting through the hallways. He knocked a vase over, the crash, echoing through the stillness. I got out of bed, planning to put him in his carrier so he'd settle down. But as I reached for him, Snowball hissed and swiped at me, his claws leaving 3 deep, bleeding scratches across the back of my hand. Before I could even react, he bolted straight into Elena's bedroom. That room was off limits. She had made it very clear early in our marriage that I was never to enter. Snowball knew that. Whenever he didn't want to deal with me, he used her room as a safe zone. I stood outside her door for a long time. I didn't go in. Instead, I went downstairs to the kitchen to find the first aid kit. After cleaning the cuts with antiseptic, I sat on the couch in the living room. Snowball never came back out. I watched the sky turn from pitch black to a bruised purple, then gray. At dawn, my phone rang. It was Elena. "Lucas, what is it going to take for you to sign the papers?" Her voice was icy, completely void of warmth. It had been that way for 5 years. Suddenly, I was just tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of bending over backward. Tired of failing. There was never going to be any love between us. Rather than dragging us both through this misery for another decade, it was time to pull the plug. I looked up the stairs at the door that would never open for me and said, "Come home. I'll give you my answer." Elena must have been terrified I would change my mind because she arrived at the house in less than 30 minutes. She walked in and sat on the armchair furthest away from me. "Fine," she said bluntly. "What are your terms?" I hadn't seen her in 3 months. She was still stunning, the kind of woman who looked like a model even in sweatpants and a t-shirt. I used to want to tell her how beautiful she was, but after being laughed at a few times, I'd learned to keep those thoughts to myself. Now, all that was left was a cold business deal. The terms I laid out were steep. Elena hesitated. She took so long to think it. Over that, my stomach started to grow. I grabbed a slice of bread from the kitchen counter and ate it dry, reminding her, "If you don't agree right now, I might change my mind about the divorce entirely." Elena froze. Finally, she clenched her hands into fists and agreed. I made her promise she would never marry Julian, the actor, or she would have to forfeit half of her shares in her family's company to me. She chose the money. Julian was the guy from the tabloids. He had somehow gotten my personal number a few months prior and sent me a text that read, "Lucas, the one who isn't loved is the real intruder here." My father's mistress, now my stepmother, had said the exact same thing to my mother years ago. I hated that phrase, and I hated people like them. The assets were split quickly. My father had never given me much of anything. Almost everything we had belonged to the Blackwell family. I didn't want any of it. The only point of conflict was Snowball. I had bought him right, After moving into the Blackwell mansion because the place felt too big and lonely, he was a round, fluffy ragdoll cat. Even if he wasn't particularly cuddly with me, he had been my only roommate for hundreds of lonely nights. Looking at him was the only thing that made me feel like a person. I wanted to take him with me. But Elena said, "Snowball is marital property." She tapped her manicured fingernails on the marble table. Her eyes narrowed with a flicker of malice. She was determined to win this one. I knew this was her way of getting back at me for the ultimatum about Julian and the shares. She had been forced to give up her public lover. She was bitter, and she wasn't going to let me walk away with a win. She wanted me to feel the sting of losing the only thing I cared about. We ended up shouting at each other. Finally, I asked her, "Why can't you just let me have this one thing? He's my only comfort." Elena's lips curled into something resembling a smile, but her eyes remained dead. "I warned you when you manipulated your way into this family," she said. "I told you then. In this marriage, you get nothing." I had tried to explain the truth 1,000 times. My father was the one who drugged her drink that night. I was a victim in that setup too. Even when I found evidence, Elena refused to look at it. She was convinced my father was just taking the blame to protect me. She believed I had orchestrated the whole thing and called the photographers to catch us together so she'd be forced to marry me. After all, everyone knew I'd had a crush on her since we were kids. I used to follow her around everywhere. In her mind, it made perfect sense that I would drug her to get what I wanted. My love for her had become my greatest crime. I felt the fight drain out of me. I didn't want to argue anymore. I agreed to her suggestion. I placed Snowball on the floor between us. Then, Elena and I stood by our respective doors. As I stroked Snowball's fur one last time, I silently prayed, "Choose me." Since my mother died, I'd had almost nothing that was truly mine. I was the one who bought Snowball. Elena never lifted a finger to feed him or change his litter. In my heart, I felt he was mine. I hoped that just once he would pick me. But Snowball didn't even look at me. He ran straight to Elena. She knelt down and scooped him up. Before she walked out, she couldn't resist one last jab. "See, Lucas? Even the cat won't choose you." It wasn't the cruelest thing she'd ever said to me. She'd said much worse while trying to force me into signing the divorce papers. After all, she didn't love me. I had loved her once. But after years of being worn down, that love had turned into ash. Elena had long ago forgotten the promises we made to each other as children. It was time for me to leave. No cat, no Elena, and no house that never felt like a home. Elena's lawyers had been thorough when we married. We had an ironclad prenup. I left with nothing from the Blackwell estate. When my father found out I'd divorced her without telling him, he cut off all my credit cards. The little bit of cash I had saved was only enough to rent a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in an old, run-down complex on the edge of the city. To get to my building, I had to walk down a long, narrow alleyway. At night, the only light came from a few flickering street lamps. I noticed a woman there who often met her boyfriend when he got off the night shift. She was always accompanied by a sleek, expensive-looking Savannah cat on a leash. The cat would trot along with its tail held high, greeting its owner with a happy purr. I'd see them whenever I walked home carrying my grocery bags. There was also a stray tortoiseshell cat in the neighborhood that watched them with jealousy. One night, the stray worked up the courage to approach them. The Savannah cat hissed immediately. The stray tried to hiss back. The woman suddenly kicked the stray hard in the ribs. "Get lost! No one wants you! Go away!" The tortoiseshell cat let out a pained yelp and scrambled under a parked car, too terrified to come out. The couple walked away, laughing, but the stray stayed under the car. It didn't make a sound. It just sat there in the dark, looking miserable. "No one wants you either, little guy," I whispered. The cat didn't answer. I peeled a cooked shrimp from my grocery bag and placed it near the tire. The cat was too scared to move. I leaned down and caught a glimpse of its eyes. They were filled with such profound sadness that it hurt to look at them. That night, the cat didn't come out. But in my sleep, I dreamed of a pair of eyes just as sad. I dreamed of being 6 years old. Back then, I didn't understand what a terminal illness was. I just watched my mother waste away in her hospital bed. When I asked what was wrong, she would pinch my cheeks and smile weakly. "Mom is just getting too fat, so I'm going on a diet." But she was already skin and bones. How much thinner could she get? I would touch her sharp collarbones, my heart aching for her. Most of the time, she was silent. When she wasn't talking, I knew she was thinking about Dad. He didn't visit often. Only his assistant, Vivian, would show up with vitamins and fruit baskets. Vivian would tell her, "Things are crazy at the office. Mr. Sterling just can't get away." Vivian was lying. I'd gone to the office to find him a few times, and he was never there. One day, I came back from the office to find a woman at the hospital with a boy my age. The woman told my mother, "Mrs. Sterling, the one who isn't loved is the real intruder." I didn't understand what it meant, but my mother started crying. I rushed forward and tried to push them out of the room, but I couldn't push away the darkness that had settled over my mother's heart. She gave up on life shortly after that. After the funeral, my father brought that woman and the boy home. "Lucas, this is your new mother and your brother. We're going to be a real family now." I didn't want a new mother or a brother. I tried to fight for my father's attention, getting into fights with the boy. But I never won him back. I remember the weight of my father's hand as he slapped me across the face. He was screaming at me. The world went blurry. All I could see was a pair of weeping eyes. The next morning, I saw the stray cat again. It was limping. I heard some neighbors gossiping near the mailboxes. Poor thing. Its owner died in a car crash, and the girlfriend got a new boyfriend with a fancy cat, so she just dumped this one. Can you believe it? Its leg is broken now. Probably won't last long. People sighed and shook their heads. Some threw it pieces of ham, but no one offered to take it home. The eyes from my dream and the eyes of that cat merged in my mind. I took the motherless child home. I spent every cent I had left at the vet. I had a cat again. A scruffy, soot-colored tortoiseshell. He was a rescue, so he was free to adopt. But the surgery for his leg cost $300. Ironically, that was exactly what I'd paid for Snowball years ago. Snowball was never affectionate, but Barnaby, I decided to name him that because he cost me my last $300, loved to paw at my hand, begging for pets. I held Barnaby and whispered to him, "Just hang in there. Dad's going to have money again soon." The Blackwell Group issued a public statement denying the rumors about Elena and Julian. Julian's number was blocked on my phone, but he used a burner to keep texting me. "Lucas, this isn't over. Elena is going to marry me sooner or later." In the heat of their romance, Elena probably made him a lot of promises, but when big money is on the line, promises fail. Julian couldn't beat a bottom line. I took screenshots of his texts. I packaged them with a photo of my marriage certificate with Elena and sold the whole bundle to a tabloid for 6 figures. This cost Paparazzi turned it into a viral sensation. Rising star. As the third wheel. Actor exposed for home-wrecking and taunting. Husband. Elena's angry call came immediately. I was busy supervising the installation of a luxury cat condo for Barnaby. "Lucas, have you lost your mind?" she screamed through the phone. "Was ruining my life not enough? You have to destroy Julian too?" All I had done was give them the truth. But Elena never believed me anyway. I didn't feel like arguing and getting hurt again. I hung up and blocked her number. Barnaby sensed my mood and trotted over, rubbing his head against my hand. "Don't be sad, Dad," he seemed to say. I picked him up. Barnaby didn't pull away like Snowball used to. Instead, he gently licked the scars on my hand where Snowball had scratched me. Slowly, Barnaby fell asleep in my arms. Before I could drift off, someone started pounding on my door. It was my childhood friend, Marcus. I don't know how he found me. He looked around my cramped, shabby apartment and frowned. "You're a Sterling. Why the hell are you living in this dump with such an unusual-looking cat?" I pulled Barnaby closer. "Don't talk about my son that way." Marcus didn't want to argue about the cat. "Your old man froze your cards and you didn't even call me? Why?" Honestly, it was fine. The freeze was temporary. What belonged to me, they were going to have to give back eventually. My father was happy seeing me struggle. He thought it meant I'd crawl back and beg. It kept him from noticing what I was actually doing. I looked at Marcus. "Is everything ready?" Marcus dropped a heavy envelope on the table and patted his chest. "Guaranteed. This is enough to bury the old man." The envelope was filled with evidence of my father's tax evasion and illegal asset transfers. Marcus and his father had been helping me gather this for 10 years. It was finally time to pull the net tight. I took the evidence to the authorities and reported my own father. He was taken away shortly after. The entire Sterling Global Group was thrown into chaos. Predictably, my stepmother tried to push her teenage son, Ryan's younger brother, forward to take control. The board of directors was a mess. My stepmother was desperately pitching to them. "This is the CEO's son. He has to lead the company while his father is away." No one was buying it. I walked into the boardroom with Marcus's father. He had been my mother's closest friend. Before entering that room, we had already visited every major shareholder. I had promised to sacrifice certain family interests to secure the board's support. Combined with the shares my mother had left me in her will, it was enough. My stepmother and her son were kicked out. But that wasn't enough. Not even close. I contacted the paparazzi again and sold them the real story of the previous generation's drama. Tycoons, affairs, secret children. The public ate it up. With my prodding, the scandal surrounding my father became even bigger than Elena and Julian's. As the victim in both scandals, I was suddenly the center of public sympathy. Someone dug up the records of me being hospitalized with a ruptured eardrum after my father slapped me as a child. Others found out that I had been sent to a standard public high school, while the stepmother's kids went to elite private academies. People posted side-by-side photos, me in a generic hoodie and my half-brother in head-to-toe designer gear. The internet rallied behind me. I used the momentum to solidify my position at the company. Taking over a conglomerate sounds glamorous, but it mostly involved endless late nights. I basically moved into the office, and Barnaby came with me. One night, when I was exhausted, Barnaby dragged a bag of cookies across the floor and nudged them toward me. Meow. Marcus, who was helping me rewrite a proposal, grumbled. "I'm working late too. Why does Barnaby only bring you snacks?" I handed him a coffee. "Maybe because you called him unusual." Barnaby let out another meow, as if in agreement. Marcus took a sip of his coffee. Well, Barnaby is definitely better than that little traitor Snowball. I knew he was right, but there was no point dwelling on the past. I was too busy. Busy making sure my father got a maximum sentence, busy tracking down the assets he'd funneled overseas, and making sure my stepmother ended up with nothing. The public outcry was deafening. After pulling her son out of school, my stepmother stormed into my office. "Lucas, you've gone too far!" I looked up from my meeting with the marketing team. I waved them out and threw a stack of photos onto the desk. "Mrs. Sterling, you know exactly what you did back then. I'm actually being quite merciful." The photos showed a young Mrs. Sterling with a string of different men. She was a career gold digger. Only a fool like my father would have married her. She collapsed into a chair, her face pale. I watched her, with a cold smile. Oh, there's more. When I first saw Julian, the actor, I couldn't help but notice how much he looked like your precious son Ryan. I got curious, so I looked into it. She started to scramble backward, her eyes darting toward the door. "You're lying. I don't know any Julian." I laughed. "Maybe you don't, but let me fill you in. I found out Julian's mother was very close with your brother back in the day. The problem is she was already married at the time. Her husband had a bit of a temper, served a few years for assault, I believe." I pulled out a DNA report and held it out to her. "What do you think that guy would do if he found out the son he's been raising for 20 years isn't actually his?" She snatched the report, tore it into pieces, and threw them at my face. "You're a monster, Lucas. You're making this up. Just wait until Ryan gets back. He'll show you." Ryan, my half-brother, Elena's true love. I wasn't surprised she was pinning her hopes on him. After leaving Elena years ago, Ryan had managed to claw his way into the DC political elite circles. Very powerful connections. Too bad. Putting your faith in someone else is never a good idea. I didn't bother telling her that. She took my silence for intimidation and walked out with her head held high, calling me a bastard one last time. I sat back in my chair. Ryan was barely keeping his own head above water. He wasn't going to save anyone. I had a whole file on Ryan, evidence of him bullying classmates in prep school. The scandals were being suppressed for now, but in the elite circles, the word was already out. Ryan was a social climber, and his new benefactors were already unhappy with his background and his fake credentials. He was in for a rough time. I was waiting for Ryan to show up. Instead, I got Elena. 2 months after the divorce, this was our first meeting. She was there to defend Ryan. She sat across the desk from me, her eyes burning with rage. "Lucas, is this your idea of revenge?" I looked at her for a long time. I realized I felt nothing. When the love is gone, Elena was just a person, a slightly annoying one. The answer was obvious. Why ask such a stupid question? I nodded. Elena slammed her hands on the desk and screamed. "They're your family. I know I loved Ryan, but you don't have to take it out on him and his mother just because of me. If you want to hurt someone, hurt me. They're innocent. Don't drive them into a corner." It was amazing how much someone could overlook when they loved a person. I felt a surge of anger, then a dark sense of amusement. I picked up my iced coffee and threw it directly into her face. "Elena, why have you forgotten? I've always hated Ryan. I hate his mother, and I hate my father most of all. When we were kids, you promised to protect me. You said you'd help me take back everything. What happened? Why did you fall for Ryan? We were supposed to be the ones who grew up together." I hated who Elena had become, but I still missed the girl she used to be. The time my father slapped me so hard I ended up in the ER, Elena had begged her parents to take her to see me. They'd come to the hospital. Elena sat by my bed and cried when she thought I wasn't looking. She was my only friend for years, until middle school. She went to an elite private academy, and my father, at my stepmother's suggestion, sent me to a rough public school. Suddenly, we were worlds apart. I was busy studying, working, and trying to build a future for myself. I thought she would wait for me. But in high school, Elena fell for Ryan. She pursued him relentlessly. She never said she loved me, and I knew my feelings were one-sided. But after seeing how much she cared for me when we were kids, how could she love him? She could have loved anyone else, and I would have accepted it. But why the one person who tormented me? I wanted to ask her once. I went to her private school and watched the wealthy, beautiful students hanging out. Ryan looked so polished, so confident. And there I was, in my cheap public school uniform, hiding in a corner. My insecurity was written all over me. No one even noticed I was there. Coffee dripped down Elena's face. She went silent. She didn't argue. She just wiped her face and walked out. I don't know what she was thinking, or if she felt even a shred of guilt. It didn't matter. Shortly after she left, I went to visit my father in jail. He had lost a lot of weight. The arrogant CEO was gone, replaced by a graying, broken man. I wasn't there for sympathy. I was there for business. "Are you sure you want to leave all your remaining shares to my brother, the kid who failed remedial math?" My father glared at me with pure hatred. "I'd rather give them to a brick than to an ungrateful dog like you." The expected answer. "Understood," I said. I straightened my suit and left. The moment I stepped out of the prison, I sent the photos of my stepmother's past to the tabloids. Mercy? I'd lied to that woman. I was just waiting for the perfect moment to burn it all down. A week later, my half-brother, the younger one, was arrested for a hit and run. He was a spoiled, talentless brat. He was easy to manipulate. A little provocation about his mother's reputation was all it took for him to lose his mind and do something reckless. The arrest sent the internet into a frenzy. Then, Marcus convinced a few of the guys Ryan had bullied in school to come forward. I read the comments on my phone. God, the stepmother's whole family is trash. How did Lucas even survive growing up there? I went to school with Lucas. He was always studying, never went home. He lived like a normal kid. We had no idea he was actually a Sterling. So sad. Like father, like son. The dad is a monster too. Outside, it was pouring rain. Finally, I could sleep peacefully. Ryan was finished. Exiled was probably a better word. We met one last time. He was still arrogant, just like his mother. He stood outside my office and smirked. "I guess you couldn't keep a woman, but you've got some talent for business, big brother." The last time he'd smirked like that, he'd said, "Sorry, Lucas. I accidentally stole your girl. Oh well, I guess my mom stole your dad's heart too." I'd punched him back then and gotten locked in my room for a week. But now my father was going to be locked in a cell for years. I swung my hand to slap him, but Elena rushed out and blocked me. She pushed me back and stood in front of Ryan. "Lucas, Ryan has lost everything. He's suffered enough. Don't forget you're the reason we broke up in the first place. You manipulated us." A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I clenched my fist and then let it drop. "Elena, you can't force me to admit to something I didn't do." She didn't move. "I can judge right from wrong myself. Stop this. Whatever happened between our parents shouldn't be Ryan's burden. Besides, you know what you did to him." I took a step back. One last attempt at the truth. "I didn't. How many times do I have to say it? I didn't buy any drugs. I didn't spike your drink. The server from that night even testified that I never touched your glass. Elena, why can't you believe me just once?" In the end, I just watched her lead him away. The sun set and the world faded into darkness. I still missed the girl from my childhood, but I hated the woman she became. Ryan's retaliation was desperate. He had one of his friends post a call-out online. Ryan and Elena were the real couple back then. Why did Elena end up marrying Lucas? Care to tell the truth about that night, Mr. Sterling? The friend even posted a love letter I'd written to Elena in 10th grade. Everyone knew you were obsessed with her. I didn't respond. They didn't need me to. The truth about the drugging incident started appearing everywhere. A paparazzi member even came forward. I was paid by the Sterlings to wait outside the hotel and take photos of Lucas and Elena coming out of the same room. Public opinion began to shift. People started quoting philosophy. He who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. Others mocked me. Turns out Lucas isn't such a saint after all. No wonder Elena cheated. Some people get what they deserve. Maybe his dad was right to hit him. The world changes fast. Those who live by public opinion often die by it. I knew that. And I was ready. Marcus was panicking. He came over to my place. What do we do? I was holding a sleeping Barnaby. Back then, I was too afraid to go to the police because I didn't want to ruin our long-term plan. And after all this time, I wasn't sure how to bring it back up. Ryan just gave me the perfect opening. The next morning, I went to the police station. I reported a cold case, a father drugging his own son to force a marriage. I still had all the information on everyone involved from that night. With the internet already buzzing, the investigation moved fast. The results were undeniable. My father and stepmother had orchestrated the entire thing. I had nothing to do with it. The police issued an official statement. The internet flipped again. Lucas's life is a tragedy. Betrayed by his father, hated by the woman he loved. Finally, the truth is out. Is delayed justice really justice? Look at everything he lost. A few skeptics remained. Maybe the CEO is just taking the fall for his son. They were quickly shut down. Are you kidding? They hate each other, and the stepmother was involved. This was a setup. People posted endless proof of the rift between me and my father. I knew Marcus was behind most of those posts, but the final blow came from an anonymous source. I can't watch this anymore. Here's what really happened. A masked figure with a voice changer posted a long video. He claimed to be part of Ryan's old friend group. Ryan is a vindictive guy. He hated Lucas, because Lucas once called him out for being a secret child when they were kids. He vowed to take everything Lucas had. He used to brag to us about how he'd trick his dad into punishing Lucas or cutting off his allowance so Lucas would be too scared to come home. When he found the love letter Lucas wrote to Elena, he got a new idea. He didn't even like Elena. He just wanted her because Lucas did. It was easy for him. He's a natural manipulator. He had Elena chasing him for 3 years. But even while they were dating, he was looking for someone better. Eventually, he found a girl from a powerful DC family. He wanted to break up with Elena, but she wouldn't let go. So he encouraged his dad to drug Lucas and Elena and call the paparazzi. That way, Elena would have to marry Lucas. The Sterlings would gain the Blackwell family's influence, and Ryan would be free to chase the DC girl. After it happened, he went to Elena crying, saying he had to step aside for his brother. Then he came back to us and bragged, "Elena hates Lucas now. If I can't have her, no one gets to be happy." The video included chat logs and a timeline that matched perfectly. The person ended with one last sentence. "Ryan, don't blame me for turning on you. You shouldn't have slept with my wife." The internet exploded. Suddenly, everyone was sending me messages of support and sympathy. Marcus came over, ecstatic. "They turned on each other. I can't believe it actually cleared your name. But I'm confused. Why would Ryan risk everything to go after his friend's wife when he had so much else going on? I turned off my phone screen and looked up. It wasn't an accident, I said calmly. The person who went after the friend's wife wasn't Ryan. It was Julian, the actor. I had used the DNA evidence to blackmail Julian into seducing Ryan's friend's wife. Then I made sure photos were taken. Photos where Julian looked just like Ryan in very compromising positions. I sent them to the friend. I knew they'd tear each other apart. Elena came to see me. She looked like a child who'd been caught doing something terrible. Small, unsure, and awkward. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I misunderstood you for so many years." I had waited 5 years for those words. Nearly 2,000 days and nights. I still remembered the day I woke up in that hotel room. I had no idea what had happened, and Elena was pointing a finger at me, screaming, "How could you be so disgusting, Lucas?" I took a deep breath, pushing down the bitterness. Back then, she wouldn't listen to me. When the marriage became a done deal, I tried to make the best of it. I thought, maybe it's not so bad. We're close now. If I'm kind enough, maybe she'll come around. I looked for evidence to prove my innocence. I tried to talk to her. I thought we could find a way back to each other, but we only drifted further apart. She started drinking, clubbing, and never coming home. The tabloids were full of her affairs. I looked at her now. She was still beautiful, but she felt like a stranger. I couldn't find the girl I remembered anywhere in her face. I stood in the doorway of my apartment. The sun was setting behind me, casting a long shadow. Elena looked into my small, shabby rental, and her expression softened into pity. "Why are you living in a place like this? It's not safe. Come home with me. Let me make it up to you. Let's start over." How do you start over after that? I felt a deep, hollow ache in my chest. I remembered all the nights I'd spent alone, gripping my fists and telling myself, "It'll get better. The truth will come out. And when it does, she'll have to make it up to me." I'd waited so long that I'd changed my mind. "We can't go back, Elena," I said. She refused to leave. I had to call building security to escort her out. A week later, I got a text from a mutual friend. "Lucas, Snowball is missing." It was Elena using his phone. I thought about Snowball, the tiny ball of fur I'd raised, the cat that had walked away from me without a backward glance. I typed and deleted a dozen things. Finally, "Elena, we're divorced. Don't contact me about this stuff anymore." She replied, "You don't want Snowball anymore?" "No." A moment later, "You don't want Snowball, and you don't want me either." "No. I had other things to do, things more important than romance." My revenge wasn't finished. Without Elena's protection, and with his friends turning on him, Ryan was nothing. He came to beg me for mercy. I handed him over to the victims of his prep school bullying. "I have more than enough money to fund their lawsuits against you," I told him. "You're going to pay for what you did." More and more victims came forward. I had my legal team organize everything. I wasn't going to let that evidence go to waste. My father and half-brother were sentenced within months of each other. I personally delivered the news to my stepmother. "How does it feel to lose everything?" I asked. She screamed and tried to lunge at me, but security held her back. She was eventually committed to a psychiatric facility. Since I was technically her son on paper, I was the one who signed the papers. She can stay there. I sold everything in the Sterling mansion that belonged to my father, my stepmother, and their kids. I donated the proceeds to charity. Then I renovated the whole place. I moved back into the house my mother had designed, with Barnaby by my side. I chose the master suite on the 3rd floor with the most sunlight, instead of the tiny room I'd been relegated to as a kid. Barnaby had the run of the place. He'd zoom around the house and then come curl up next to me. Later, while driving through Elena's neighborhood, I saw a scraggly, dirty rag doll. It was Snowball. He ran toward me and rubbed against my leg. He was more affectionate than he'd ever been. Why is it that love is only given after it's too late? I've always hated the taste of expired candy. I called someone to pick him up and return him to the Blackwell estate. Snowball meowed and struggled as they carried him away. But I didn't look back. I was busy heading toward a much brighter tomorrow. Side story. Elena's perspective. I made a promise to a boy once, and I broke it. I forgot my word. I fell for the brother of the person he hated most. He avoided me for 7 years. Then, after college, we woke up in bed together. I was convinced he had drugged me, that he'd driven Ryan away and forced me to marry him. I told myself I could never love a man that manipulative. But he was so gentle that there were moments when I almost gave in. I told myself, Elena, don't forget what he did to you. If you love him, you're betraying Ryan. I couldn't let myself love him. To numb the guilt, I started acting out. I flirted with actors, went to bars, did anything to hurt him, but I never actually let anyone touch me. I just wanted to punish him. I begged him for a divorce 100 times. But the day he finally said yes, why did it hurt so much? I saw him sitting in the corner of the kitchen, eating a plain piece of bread, and I had a flash of memory. Why couldn't I remember where I'd seen that before? My chest felt tight. I told myself I was just angry he'd forced me to choose between Ryan and my company. So I took his cat. It was the first time I saw his eyes go red with tears. I should have been happy, but I felt like I was suffocating. The next time I heard about him, he had taken over Sterling Global. And then the truth came out. Piece by piece. He hadn't drugged me. It was all Ryan's plan. I looked at Ryan and felt nothing. No spark, no love. Only a burning rage at being played for a fool. I realized that love and hate had flipped. The reality I'd refused to see was now the only thing left. I had loved Lucas all along. Fate is a cruel joke. What did those 5 years of misery even mean? If I were him, I'd hate me too. And he did. He wouldn't forgive me. He didn't even want the cat back. He had a new cat now, one that actually loved him. And later he had a new partner, Lily, and a child. I'm the only one left, trapped in the past. Every day, I watch Snowball sit by the door waiting for him. I realize now that the punishment I tried to give him was actually a life sentence for myself. Every time I look at the cat, I see Lucas. And I remember being a little girl, holding his hand and saying, "Don't be scared, Lucas. I'll protect you."